In the eyes of the world, Joseph Mengele has become more myth than man, a symbol of evil, a notorious criminal no one could catch. The charges against him read like a catalogue of horror. His title was doctor, but his victims had known him as the Angel of Death.
In a small cemetery at Embu, near Sao Paulo, one of the biggest news stories in the world is unfolding. On June 6, 1985, Plot 321 is opened.
The remains exhumed might finally put to rest the mystery of a man who in life was as much an enigma as in death.
Joseph Mengele comes from a time and place where Germans believe they are the super race destined to dominate the world.
Four decades after the Holocaust, Joseph Mengele is still at large.
Will not rest until Joseph Mengele is caught and brought to justice.
To stir the conscience of the world, the Mengele twins return to the scene of the crime and demand justice. As a result, a joint team of investigators from Germany, Israel, and the United States is formed.
40 years after the Holocaust, the hunt for Joseph Mengele has taken on new life. The SS doctor now carries a $3.4 million bounty on his head, including $1 million from Israel and Germany's reward of 1 million marks.
The first thing we did, we tried to locate everyone who had any contact with Mengele's post-war activity. We contacted his family. We had various ways of getting to the family. They were not terribly helpful to us.
The small town of Windsburg is virtually owned by the Mengele family. They control its main industry, with hundreds of people on their payroll.
Joseph Mengele was born here on March 16, 1911, the eldest son of Karl and Walburger Mengele. His father owns a company that produces farm equipment. Karl devotes most of his time to the business, whose slogan is, Mengele, the better idea. When the Nazis come to power, the factory becomes the third largest threshing company in Germany. Since Karl is a devout member of the Nazi Party, Adolf Hitler honors his achievement with a visit. But Joseph Mengele has more grandiose ambitions. He tells a classmate that one day his name will be in the encyclopedia.
In Günzburg, the team of investigators confront a wall of silence. The investigation focuses on Hans Settelmeyer, who has devotedly served the family since 1944.
He was interrogated at least 3-4 times. He denied any connection to Mengele, but it was known that he was the contact man.
The starting point was a house search that we performed at the signatory Sedlmayr, and we found there, behind a wallpapered door in the wall, letters, and were also able to secure a great amount of evidence.
These recently uncovered diaries and an autobiographical novel written by Joseph Mengele portray his life on the run.
Mengele describes his escape. He remains anonymous by blending into a mass exodus of refugees and German soldiers fleeing west. The SS doctor carries a suitcase with specimens and his research on twins.
Professor Norman Stone, an expert on the Third Reich, has examined the writings.
And so he dodges through the bombs, and all the columns and columns of refugees, and the peasants trekking in from Silesia with Granny on the top of a mattress, and all the rest of it. And there's this bloody doctor with his box of eyeballs saying all present and correct. He's no idea at all that he's done anything wrong. He never expected to be on anybody's list. As far as he was concerned, he'd been quite decently doing medical experiments for the good of the human race.
Mengele discards his SS uniform and disguises himself as a Wehrmacht soldier. He hides in the vicinity of Wieden, near Czechoslovakia. But in June 1945, he is picked up by an American Army patrol and imprisoned at the POW camp at Schauenstein, Germany. Holding nearly 3 million German POWs, the U.S. Army is overwhelmed. It is forced to release as many as 30,000 prisoners a day. Without updated lists of wanted war criminals, the Americans only detain members of the SS.
And they developed a very expedient means of determining who was a likely suspect. And the most effective way was for the men to take their shirts off and to raise their arms. SS had the blood type tattoo under their left arm. Mengele did not have the blood type tattoo.
6 weeks after his capture, the Americans released the Angel of Death under his own name. Mengele escapes to Rosenheim, Bavaria. Fearing that a dragnet search is inevitable, he gets a job on a farm, hiding under the name Fritz Holman. Irene, his wife, visits him almost every month. They secretly rendezvous at Sinsay Lake, where she delivers him money and news from the family. Sometimes she brings along their 2-year-old son, Ralph, who was born while his father served at Auschwitz.
Nuremberg, April 1946. In the war crimes trials, the commandant of Auschwitz, Rudolf Höss, cites Dr. Mengele's experiments on twins.
These included lowering the body temperature to 28 degrees centigrade, experiments with poisoned bullets and contagious diseases.
As the Nuremberg trials continue, Mengele feels the noose tightening around his neck. Many of his Auschwitz colleagues have already been sent to the gallows. In Günzburg, American military police question the Mengele family, but they are told that Joseph is dead. Dressed in black, Irena goes to church and asks the priest to pray for her husband's soul. This marks the beginning of the family's conspiracy of silence.
July 1948, 3.5 years after Auschwitz, the SS doctor decides to flee Europe for Argentina until the war crimes hysteria dies down. Irene chooses to stay in Germany with young Rolf. His father, Karl, pays an underground SS network to help his son escape. Mengele knows that once on Italian soil, he will be protected by Roman Catholic priests who assist Nazi war criminals like him. He reaches Innsbruck, Austria, his last stop before the Brenner Pass. It is April 17, Easter Sunday. Genoa, the summer of 1949. Mengele applies for an international Red Cross passport from the Swiss consul, saying he's Helmut Grego, a prisoner of war. His request is granted. Aboard the North King, Mengele sails to Argentina. It is 4.5 years after Auschwitz. In Buenos Aires, Joseph Mengele, alias Helmut Grego, begins his new life with a few anxious moments. Going through customs, his suitcase from Auschwitz is searched. But no one knows German, and he's waved through. The suitcase is never mentioned again in Mengele's writings. Its whereabouts remain a mystery. He takes a taxi into the city. A contact man who was supposed to meet him never shows up. With no place to stay, he registers at a third-class hotel called the Palermo. The Buenos Aires that Mengele finds has a large and powerful German community into which he can easily disappear. Nazis are welcomed in Argentina by dictator Juan Perón. His sympathies are based not only on ideology. Perón is suspected of having benefited from treasures smuggled into Argentina by the Nazis. Crates with gold and valuables from the death camps were turned into currency and deposited into bank accounts of Perón's mistress and future wife, Evita.
Mengele moves to Calle Arenales, a neighborhood popular with German expatriates. One of his first contacts is Wilhelm Sassen, a former member of the SS.
This relationship was very good.
Mengele discusses Auschwitz with Sassen, telling him about his medical experiments.
He wanted to find out to what extreme can you expose a human being mentally, physically, etc., etc. It all had a philosophical significance, I can assure you that.
Sassen is honored to introduce Mengele into a circle of German friends. Among them is former SS officer Adolf Eichmann, also hiding in Buenos Aires. Mengele joins the Kameradenwerk, a powerful underground Nazi network with influential ties to business and government. Mengele meets its reputable leader, Hans Rudel.
Rudel uses his network's rich treasury to smooth the way for Nazis in hiding.
Hush money was paid directly. They had excellent ties with the authorities, and this money came in quantities from Germany through German companies that were represented in South American countries.
These documents reveal how Argentine police tracked Mengele's every move. Yet the information was only used to extort money in return for police silence. Rudel becomes Mengele's guardian in Argentina and his entree into German high society. A hit at social gatherings, Dr. Mengele is the life of the party.
He had a way of charming people. He had an exquisite taste in culture, music, theater.
After 5 years, Mengele feels at home, protected and secure. He begins to live the good life and frequents restaurants and theaters catering to the German elite. The Cologne Theater becomes his particular favorite, and he fits right in. Sitting all around him are many highly cultured Nazis and war criminals like him.
But his lifeline continues to be his supportive family in Günzburg. He sends letters and poems to his son. This is a children's book he wrote and illustrated for young Ronny.
A letter arrives from his estranged wife in Germany. She wants a divorce. Mengele walks into the West German embassy and signs a power of attorney so he can divorce by proxy. The document bears his real name.
His second wife will be Martha, the widow of his younger brother. The match has been arranged by his father Karl. Martha holds shares in the family firm. In 1956, Joseph Mengele flies to Switzerland to meet her.